you can't argue with destiny. You know, destiny has decreed something else. And so I think that's one of the foremost things when it comes to this core strength is acceptance of what is. Sometimes you do have to challenge destiny or what is emerging, not because you know, it has to be your way, but sometimes you just have to check to make sure that this is what destiny has decreed or what destiny wants. And so this thing of growing an unshakable core strength, and of course all of the words can be taken apart and examined, and one of the things that we have seen due to the change in everyone's schedule is that many people have taken up gardening. And I've already been involved in that. We're fortunate enough to have a vegetable garden. But someone yesterday, one of our teachers, was showing me her bathroom. And I swear she must have at least 50 solo cups, you know, those red solo cups. She must have about 50 in there, in which she's, you know, the seeds are germinating and they're at that very tender stage before she can take them out and put them in the garden. And it's such a variety of things that she has. And so when it comes to growing, you know, what is needed, we need soil. The soil has to be good. There has to be fertilizer, there has to be water, there has to be light. And I suppose we could use that as an analogy for when we're trying to grow anything, including strength. And if we're talking about core strength, then there is an emphasis on the need for your core to be strong, physically speaking, in that it is required for good balance, good resistance, and everything else. But in this context, what are we talking about? And I think at one level, there's a line from a famous poem, William Butler Yeats, where he said, "I hear it in the deep heart's core." And maybe that is the thing that has to be strengthened, is our heart. And, you know, what will it look like? What does strength look like? It's not about power. It's not about, you know, being competitive or something like that. But contrary-wise, I think strength in its truest essence is a very subtle thing, is a very sensitive thing, and is not necessarily always apparent. A little bit like those plants that all the work is going on underground, and at some point you see the result of the combination of all of those different things, that what emerges ultimately is the tree, and on the tree there's the flowers, there's the fruits for all to see and even take benefit from. The tree isn't going to eat its own fruit, but it's there for others to nourish themselves with. And so strength doesn't insist, and it isn't controlling, but it's a very soft thing rather than the opposite of it being hard and unyielding. It is very malleable and fluid. And this is, I think, what where we want to get to is that it's not something that's forced. It's not, as I say, in competition with anybody else. And, you know, what is the image that comes when you think of strength? And usually in terms of nature, many things in nature show that strength, not least the tree. And one of the qualities, I think, of strength that is often overlooked or not valued so much is stability. And it might be undervalued, but stability means reliability, means consistency. It's something that people can rely on, not necessarily that they depend on your stability, but this is, at the moment, nothing is stable, nothing is dependable, nothing is, you can't count on anything. And so for some, yes, that is a challenge. But for some others, it's a challenge that they're willing to take, not a challenge that diminishes them or makes them fail, but rather they step up to the challenge. And I think too, when it comes to growing this strength, then discipline is part of it. But once again, it's not something that's enforced. It may not even be to do with like time, that I have to do, you know, I have to practice so many hours a day or for so many minutes or whatever else. But rather, discipline, I think, even though that aspect is there, but discipline is more to do with, I think, an attitude. And so we'll look at that later, of what is the attitude wherein I need to have discipline. And so when it comes to growing a garden, all of the things that we mentioned that will result in a successful outcome. But of course, we also have to look for weeds. Weeds are one thing, and those can be removed, but it is where rather there are rocks. And the rocks would be where I have grown resentments. And that those resentments, which maybe started off as weeds, but because I nourished them or nurtured them, they then became hard and firm and unyielding. And resentments are very, very dangerous in that they continue, they have an effect on my physical health. And what I have seen, even historically speaking, they are then fed to the next generation, and they begin to carry those resentments as well. And it could be against persons or people or situations. And so it's kind of like, you know, Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? And so what's in my garden? What is it that I am planting? What is it that I am nourishing? And I was thinking, you know, this thing of this subtle aspect of strength, that it's to do with the soul. And I think that the soul, unfettered, in its original state of being, was sensitive, but not sensitive in terms of a touch me not, but sensitive in terms of intuitiveness, that it was automatically intuitive. It was in harmony with its surroundings, and that it could instantly discern everything just by being intuitive. It wasn't in any danger. But then in a kind of a way, you know, just like, again, sometimes you'll see, and I remember this happened a lot for me in India when I first went, you would see these buildings that had become dilapidated due to lack of care and centuries of having been there. But even in looking at them, you got a sense of their former grandeur and greatness. And I think the soul is a little bit like that too, in that it starts off magnificent, totally strong, totally healthy, sensitive, intuitive, creative, expressive. But then gradually, because of being overly associated with matter in the form of taking on all these different garbs, meaning taking rebirth, that there was a change in the ratio of soul power to physical power. And so that our intuitive nature maybe changed, and instead I became sensitive, in that I was like the touch me not plant, or at the extreme end in relation to others. So I became sensitive in relation to myself, in what you said or what you did. I'm the center of my own attention, and so I react. As regards others, I become desensitized. And then it's like, instead of where there's automatic synchronicity and trust, you know, that my trust also, due to what was happening externally, and then my response to that the trust disappeared, and in its place either I suppose at one level it could have been gullibility, or in its extreme form, I became cynical, that I would no longer accept the goodness. And then acceptance is another thing. And so whereas before, able to accept everything for what it was in terms of time and space and whoever, that I rejected what was happening. I questioned everything. But what really was coming into play here, because at a subtle level, I no longer felt that I was able to move things. And so this sense of the need to control, that I wanted to be my way and no other way. And so that the spiritual power that had been there then just becomes a kind of a force, and where my ego predominates, and ego will always insist on having it its way. And what I'm not seeing any longer is the effect of all of what's going on in my garden, that not only is it corrupting whatever else might be growing there, but it then manifests in the form of vibrations. And I like to think that one of the things that that I do have some control over, because it's a choice, and that is my vibrations. Now, meditation is going to help me to discern that which is of a high frequency and that which is of a low frequency. And, you know, you can see it even in terms of, you could take even words, you know, and at one level they resonate and they make you feel good, and you're using, you know, just like, say for example, something like what might be a quality is determination, but that quality in its lowest denominator would be stubbornness, right? And so I sometimes tell people, if you want to see your qualities or the potential that you have for qualities, look at your weaknesses, because they're not really your weaknesses. They are the perverted form of what was originally your strengths. That it started off as your strengths, but then when you no longer had the spiritual energy to maintain that, you still wanted to get the same feedback. So instead of the determination, you got stubborn. Instead of, cooperating, you started controlling things to make them your way. And so time at the moment is giving us some of itself, time, in order for us to maybe look on the inside. We no longer have the excuse of, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do the other thing. But it's time, because I always feel that the universe, whether you call it the universe or some may call it God, although I will distinguish between the two, but that it's kindly disposed towards us, and it wants to not just get us back to where we started from, but so it's not going back, but it's actually forward motion. But it is reminding myself that that strength is not to be garnered from anything external to myself, not even the most amazing spiritual personality that you can think of. They cannot give it to you. They can certainly mirror it back to you, but it is work that you have to do for yourself. But sometimes in being aware that it's already in me, it's already in that place that is beyond my personality, that is beyond the construct of the societal norms and the limitations that I've imposed on myself, or the criticisms that I've imposed on myself, that core is still there and can be, if you like, dug up and re-emerged once again. And I was thinking, anybody who knows me knows that I have a great deal of love for animals, and not least cats. And so thinking about some of the things, I just used the words cats in terms of what it is that I need to work on to help me to get to that strength. And as mentioned earlier, it's not so much about a discipline, and I need to sit down for 45 minutes in the morning, and I need to sit down for 45 minutes in the evening, but it's about an attitude, just being in the world. And so the attitude, as far as I'm concerned, and you can make up your own acronym and decide what it is that you need to have. And that is compassion, acceptance, trust, and then if I add on S, let's make it cats, then I would say the methodology for the exploration and the excavation of that is silence.